Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a late night insight video on an Orto Parisi fragrance, which I do not own a full bottle. Actually, I only have two bottles from the house of Orto Parisi. One is Cuoium. It's the only one I bought with my own money. As you know, I'm a leather fanatic. The other is called Bergamask, which was very kindly gifted to me. So I will be doing more reviews on this house, and I think I've reviewed one or two from this house, if I'm not mistaken. And there'll also be some reviews from Nasomatto, of course, as well. Gualtieri's other house, if you will, his first house. His more, well, I can't even say designer, but easier to digest line. Orto Parisi is where he really kind of does the crazy things, which I really enjoy. But today we're going to talk about a fragrance called Brutus, and usually it's very hard for me to remember who sent me what. Bexod had the great idea of me making an Excel spreadsheet and putting in there who sent me everything, but I don't know, it's a lot of work. But this one is easy for me to remember because there's only one person who sent me decants that look like this. And if you remember, his name was Shiva Vareen. Anyone remember Shiva from way back in the day? He used to be on Rich Mitch's live streams, and he was in the military. He was a very cool dude. I actually had a chance to chat with him offline a couple times. Very, very cool. And then unfortunately he just disappeared, as some people do. But wherever you are, Shiva, I hope that you and your girlfriend and your son are doing absolutely amazing. Come back around one day, my friend. Love to say hello again. But he sent me some of these amazing fragrances years and years ago that I've been sitting on. And Brutus is one of them. And you can see this was full. And I've probably worn this to bed 4 times now over the last 2 or 3 years since he sent this to me. And so here's the thing about Orto Parisi. If you don't know, there is no note listing that is disclosed, okay? So no one knows what the notes are. And the note listings between the websites vastly differ. So for example, if you go to base notes, it says citrus fruits and patchouli, which I can't get behind that note listing. If you go to Fragrantica, it's probably a little closer to the truth. Mandarin orange, bergamot, lavender, geranium, rose, patchouli, cedar, oak moss, labdanum, amber, and musk. I can get behind that one a little bit more. But who knows if that's actually correct or not, because if you go to Parfumo, you'll notice there's just no note listing, and that's actually the correct way. There is a reason that Alessandro Gualtieri does it that way. And we'll talk a little bit about the reasons why. But if you go to his actual website, the Orto Parisi website, even though there's no write-up on the fragrance, there is pictures, okay? So, for example, the first picture of Orto Parisi's Brutus is what kind of looks like the bottle with an X running through it, okay? The second picture looks like almost like this blackened mud, maybe with like imprints around it, almost like someone took like deep black soil, okay, or maybe like soil that there was an oil spill on, and used maybe like a child's sandbox toys or something to like mold the shape of the soil into these different shapes with imprints on it, okay? The other picture looks like a man who actually dove into that oily blackened soil, and his face is like covered in this chocolatey looking dirt, okay? And he's looking dead at the camera, but he clearly has like dirt all over his face. So you have the earthiness, you have the sort of black resinous substance, and then the final picture is a man crouched down with some green trees behind him, smoking an old cigarette. Looks like a very old picture in black and white or something. But those are the 3 pictures that kind of give you hints or clues about Brutus, okay? So Brutus came out in 2014, so it's a decade old now. And as I've said, I've reviewed 1 or 2 on the channel already, but his style is a little bit of an anomaly, okay? Because he uses a lot of modern synthetic materials, which many people, when you get hardcore into the fragrance game, as we are deep in the fragrance game, friends, you will stop liking those type of fragrances, okay? So, there some people kind of get put off by the modern amber woody materials, and they get, they love smelling the natural smelling roses, the natural smelling sandalwoods, the real ouds and all that stuff, and they go down a different path. He uses a lot of modern amber woods and synthetic woods, and I'm sure captive molecules from the big fragrance houses and all that. but he does it in such a way that's so brash and bold and just literally gives no fucks. I mean, I'm going to do what I'm going to do with it, and whether you like it or you don't like it, I don't care. I'm creating it, and it's my creation, and I'm not following trends. And many of his fragrances are beast mode. They last forever. They project. They have all the magic of modern perfumery ingredients and captive molecules behind it. And so, if you're the type of person who complains, "Hey, my skin eats fragrances," or "Fragrances don't last on me," try this house. Orto Parisi is one of those houses that is filled with amber woods, which you would think smells cheap, and I would hate them as much as a brand like, let's say, Unique Luxury. Unique Luxury is filled with amber woods, and I despise it. I think it's one of the worst uses of amber woods. This is the opposite side of that. Gualtieri kind of uses these materials in a way that are so unique. He doesn't just put a big slug of amber woods in there. There seems to be chaos, but reason behind the chaos, if that makes sense. So I have to say, I love how he just kind of goes for it. He has this plan. He's a contrarian. He goes against the grain. He just kind of creates from a place of artistic creation. And he really doesn't care what anyone thinks or talks about or anything like that. And like I said, famous for not giving any note listing. And the reason is he wants you to kind of figure it out for yourself. So he wants you to use your nose and interpret the fragrance how you would interpret it without being influenced by a note listing, which I think can be good and it can be bad, okay? It can be good because it makes people think. It makes you think. It makes you think outside the box. It makes you use your own nose to smell instead of just looking at the note listing and going, okay, it's different. It can be bad because I think some people need a nudge in the right direction. So when you watch reviews of many of his fragrances, sometimes they are all over the map. Sometimes people just take the regular note listing, like for example on base notes where it says citrus fruits and patchouli, and they'll say, guess what? In the top I smell citrus fruits and I smell patchouli. And I will tell you that probably both of those things are in there, citruses and patchouli. But that's not the way I actually smell this fragrance, okay? So first let's talk about the name, Brutus. Obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is Brutus. I mean, who else is there? Who else is Brutus to me? Brutus is the famous Brutus who stabbed Caesar in the back. Et tu, Brutus? However, it's interesting because when you first spray this fragrance, to me, and if you go to Fragrantica, what's even more interesting is they have this labeled as an aromatic fougere. Now, I've smelled many aromatic fougères in my life. I've never smelled an aromatic fougere that smells like this, ever. And so if you twisted my arm, would I call this an aromatic fougere? Hell no. In fact, the very first thing it's compared to in Fragrantica is Heritage, which almost made me fall out of my chair laughing. This is nothing like Heritage, so get that out of your brain right now, okay? Absolutely ridiculous comparison. Insane. Some of the Fragrantica comparisons are just like, what? But so, however, I will say that when you wear this fragrance, usually I don't always look at some of those websites because I don't want to be influenced. But when I started to think about fougere, I started to think, okay, if you think about a fougere while you're wearing it, this fragrance can be thought of as either a fougere category that is literally being stabbed in the back at tu Brutus by this kind of giant slug of amber, literally amber, like labdanum-y amber, okay? Or in the first 15 to 20 minutes, it can be seen as like an amber fragrance being stabbed in the back by a fougere, with this weird fougere background of kind of hidden greenery, kind of like the guy smoking a cigarette. You're paying attention to him, but in the background, you get that beautiful green fern-like look behind him. So depending on how you smell this fragrance and what notes seem dominant to you in the opening, you're going to get one of those two depictions. For me, my personal taste, or what I've settled on with this, is that the first couple seconds, or the first 10 or 20 seconds, the fougere DNA wins the battle. It almost seems like for example, when the senators go to stab Caesar, the first one that actually pulls out the knife and tries to stab him, Caesar's like military training and years of being out in the field and on patrol and all this stuff, in campaign, kick in instinctively, and he dodges it, and he pulls the guy and throws him aside. The next guy who comes after him, he takes the knife and throws it behind him, and he's like, what are you guys doing, kind of thing, And so his military training naturally kind of saves him from the first couple slashes. But when there's dozens and dozens of senators that then end up getting in on it, there was nothing he could do. He basically just sort of, by the 12th, 13th, 15th, 20th stab, or however many times, I'm sure he got stabbed a bunch. There's a report on it. I'm sure you can find it. But when the dozens of senators ganged up on him, he basically just died in a pool of his own blood on the Senate floor wearing his toga, right? And here, it's almost like the fougere seems to want to escape the stab in the beginning, but to my nose, that amber note is just too dominant. It's almost like you end up getting this woody, spicy amber note that isn't as sticky. Actually, the fragrance that came to mind first, the very first fragrance that came to mind for me, is a Dior called Mitzah. Like when that amber note comes in and kind of takes over the fougere category, right? And interestingly enough, I just reviewed a Dior fragrance called Vetiver today. So if you're into Dior reviews or Dior Privé reviews, check that out. And I will review Mitzah. I've been sitting on this decant for a long time. But it's not as sticky or honeyed or thick. Mitzah's a very thick, heavy amber that uses honey and all these other things to make it even more gelatinous smelling. Here, the amber adds a little bit of freshness probably from the geranium. I would agree that there probably is some sort of bergamot, geranium, tonka DNA making this somewhat of a fougere, but it's not like any fougere you've ever smelled. Calling it an aromatic fougere, to me, is going to make you think about things like, Gucci Nobile or something like that. It's nothing like the aromatic fougères from the past, okay? Nothing like these. When I think of aromatic fougères, this is the kind of stuff that I'm thinking of. Nothing like that. Nothing like a classical aromatic fougere. Let's put it that way, okay? And so I think the geranium, and there's probably some pine in here, or like stone pine needles or something like that, I would think. Adding this freshness, this foresty freshness to the background. And also kind of, it starts out, like I said, with that fougere DNA. So you do get some greenery kind of coming through before the amber comes in and kind of stabs it to death. Terrible analogy, but I thought that would be a cool way to describe it. But the ambery notes don't go too syrupy because the green notes kind of balance everything out, and it doesn't go as spicy as many ambers you may be thinking of. So it's not as heavy as something like Ambre Sultan. Okay, it's not as spicy as Ambre Sultan. It's not as heavy from the fougere kind of touches, if you will, the green geranium and all this other stuff. But what ends up happening is this very synthetic smelling woody note starts to appear. And you'll kind of slowly start to notice it 15 to 20 minutes in, and it like strengthens as time goes on. So maybe I'm getting soft in my old age. I feel like this is something I easily could have bashed in the early days of my channel. And I could see many other frag heads not liking this because of the pure brash synthetic nature of the wood. Okay, the wood in here, especially if you've smelled like real high quality sandalwood oil, real ouds and woods that feel soft and meditative and contemplative, and you're going to sit down and be with your own thoughts and relax, and it feels like you can just finally breathe and get the monkey off your back and just relax after a hard day. This is the opposite of that. I mean, this is the type of like synthetic harsh wood note that would be right at home in like a Le Labo fragrance to me, or something like that. And so that amber note that really sort of takes over, like it feels like the labdanum is not in the base. It feels like the labdanum is in the top, okay? And I know Gualtieri loves doing weird things with his fragrances. It wouldn't surprise me if he likes trying to stick different elements, which are usually in the base and the top or something like that. But that amber note takes over the whole fougere construction, but then it starts to dissipate again, okay? So once you get to the 30-minute mark, so again, the first 10 to 20 seconds, fougere, green fougere, DNA. Very quickly, though, it shifts to that ambery, heavy base where you start thinking, man, this smells like an amber. I mean, it literally smells like a fougere with this weird amber contrast, if you will. But then 30 minutes in, that woody note really starts to amp itself up. And as that happens, the amber note, the labdanum heavy, amber, which can go slightly leathery. The cap almost looks like this weird like leather wood thing, but I think it's supposed to be wood or walnut wood or something I heard. but I don't know. I don't own a bottle. I've never seen it, but he usually does these weird things on the top of his caps. Like that's the top of Cuoium, that's the top of Bergamask. So I think this one's supposed to be like walnut wood or something like that. Um, and so what ends up happening is this woody note really starts to like unmask itself. Just imagine Brutus like, ah, it is I. And Caesar's like, what? It too, Brutus? But it sort of just blends with this synthetic woody note, which is what I think is sort of hinting to the top of that cap. You know, the hard um, walnut wood historically is very, very hard, or you know, just think of like a hard wood. And it's supposed to be like cracked looking and stuff like that. And then just imagine blending that with this new aged synthetic patchouli smell. And I say new age when I describe the patchouli because yes, the patchouli is very scratchy, but it's nothing like your grandfather's or dad's patchouli, depending on how old you are. It smells nothing like their patchouli. Okay, it's nothing like Givenchy Gentleman from 1974. It's not this type of patchouli. It's not Luciano Pavarotti. It's not even the Tom Ford Moss Brex, which is kind of a newer, updated version of this. This is like, you know, even that makes something like Moss Brex seem slightly old school. This is like a newer age style, because what ends up happening is when the patchouli makes this entrance, which to my nose really starts to form properly, almost like the idea of murdering Caesar, you know, finally coming together, forming, really forms in the fragrance like 30 minutes in. And when it makes an entrance, it almost makes an entrance as if it's on fire. It's like a smoky patchouli. It literally smells like the patchouli is smoking. Hence the picture of the guy smoking in front of the woods. And it smells earthy, it smells smoky, it smells woody, it smells dark, it smells like it has this weird, intense, clean smell. I know that sounds weird for a patchouli, but the earthy, smoky smell is one half, and if you just kind of think about it, I mean, you would probably be saying to yourself, wait a minute, intense, clean, and earthy and woody and all this stuff don't really go together, and you're right. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. That is the contrast to me. The contrast for me is all of these weird modern aroma chemicals with strange names, probably like some of them I've talked about on the channel in the past are called things like wood leather and golden wood and all this other weird stuff. Whatever stupid name IFF and Givaudan can come up with to sell their captive molecules. And some of them are known to have this very clean and intense woody smell, okay, like mixed with wood. So imagine like, I don't want to say bleach, but just imagine like this strange cleanliness, like cleansed with fire or something, okay? Or in this case, cleansed with assassination of Caesar. But what's interesting is that, like I said, the cap also has this copper-like look to it. And it almost looks like it's been burnt or chipped or hit in places, you know. Gualtieri loves using these weird kind of imageries, which I enjoy. I like his style, okay? I'm a fan. And the woody notes here have this weird, strange amalgamations of like what smell like woody ambers that will last on your skin forever. But again, he uses everything in like this unique and different way. So when I say woody ambers, your first kind of inclination is to go, a woody amber fragrance in a niche, you know, line. But again, he uses them in a way that sets him apart. But whatever weird synthetic wood thing he's got going on almost starts to turn that cleanse by fire thing I was telling you about, starts to have this almost like bitter smell of like metallic oxidization, okay? So it's almost like copper, or like imagine like a copper or a bronze helmet like burning on the battlefield, okay? So most Roman armor was manufactured actually out of iron, but there was some bronze that was used in Roman armor over the years. And maybe this is just me geeking out way too hard on the imagery Gualtieri is trying to present, but the fact that he even got me thinking about this just goes to show that his style works. I mean, this is accomplishing his goals in and of itself. But I mean, just imagine the act of literally killing Caesar, Brutus killing Caesar, and what it led to later on, the wars between Mark Antony and Augustus, or whatever it is, all the following Roman emperors that came because of Caesar and because of the murder and the response to the death and all that stuff, right? And I just imagine like burning Roman armor on the battlefield. And they won a lot of battles, but they didn't win them all. You know, Hannibal terrorized the Romans for a long time. That was much later. But, you know, one of the most amazing things about the Romans is that they had this ability to just kind of bury their dead and just send out another legion. And it's like once you thought you beat them, you didn't beat them. You know, there was a whole another legion at your doorstep. And so I have this imagery of that, you know, um, all the wonders and the glory, but also the death and destruction and suffering and all that stuff. So what I will say is that as the clock ticks by, like as the hours go, so 1 hour turns to two, that strange ambery labdanum heaviness that's put in the top seems to like it just kind of roars out of nowhere in the opening, seems to roar out of the fragrance and kind of dissipate into the. It's still there, but it starts to kind of switch places. So at first, I notice when I wear this, the ambery bits are in the front, and then what ends up happening is there's like this reversal, and now the greener, strange bronze slash copper oxidization thing I was talking about, that takes the forefront along with this new age patchouli. And at some point in the dry down, I swear, there are these elements that make me think there's some sort of weird like green frankincense used or something. At other times, I think it's like just the after effects of like the smoky patchouli, the smoke rising from the patchouli, and all this stuff, and the black, oily, resinous kind of soil imagery that was used in one of the pictures. And I will say, I mean, I like this fragrance. I like everything I've smelled from Gualtieri, even the stuff I don't really like Bergamask, which is probably one of the least favorite things that I've smelled from him. I still like it because it's unique and different and all this stuff, but we'll review this at at another time. But even the stuff from him that I don't really like, I like, if that makes sense. And so I like Brutus, but I've heard some people say, "Oh, this is like his refined scent. This is like his elegant stuff. This is the..." And to me, I can't think of, there's nothing in Gualtieri's portfolio to me that screams refined. It's just when I think of refinement, this is not it. All of his stuff is using these big, crazy, bold, just strange, exotic, harsh. You could use the word chemically. You could use brutal for Brutus, but these different modern synthetic aroma chemicals. Some may be amberwood, some may be other captive molecules and all this other stuff that wouldn't be described as amberwoods, but still may put some people off that like natural smelling perfumery. Like if you're into the Chanels, or if you're into the, artisanal brands that use like real sandalwood and stuff like that, this is going to be the exact opposite of that, because the word refined just never comes to mind when I think about Gualtieri's work. It just never does. He happens to use these materials in a way which is unique and different and sets him apart. And as a creator, that's what you want. But I mean, his fragrances, by his very nature, feel volatile and destructive. They feel chaotic. That's a good word for it, chaotic. Although I'm sure Nietzsche would love these fragrances, order out of chaos and all that shit. But I enjoy his creations because there's no one else I've ever come across that uses these materials in quite this way. Like, his fragrances are unique to him. Like they have his fingerprint on them. And what's crazy is these materials are out there. Anyone could try to put these together in such a way, but he does it in a way that's unique. And he's a contrarian. He kind of goes his own way. And even though it's chaotic, I wouldn't say it's elegant, but I would say it's artistic, and that's the main thing. And you can see it got me thinking. I talked about all these weird kind of bends and twists in the fragrance, but my point in this little ramble at the end is just because this is not as crazy as something like Black Afgano, or let's say Cuoium. These are two crazy type fragrances to me. Doesn't make it refined and elegant just because it's less crazy than some of his other work. It's closer to the lighter side of his creations, but this stuff does have materials in it that will last for days on your skin. It feels like weeks if it gets on your clothes. I mean, it has that type of material in it, and so yes, I mean, it's definitely an Orto Parisi creation. It's just not like the most amped up Orto Parisi, if that makes sense. So But Shiva, wherever you are, brother, I hope you're doing well, my friend. Thank you for this very generous decant. I'm glad I'm finally getting around to doing this review. And that's the thing. I think Shiva literally sent me these like 2 years ago. I'm not gonna lie. I bet you I could check my messages and see exactly when. But I bet you it's been 2 years. And actually, I think I still have more of these that he sent that I haven't got to. Like he sent me Interlude 53 in one of these that all at the same time. And I still haven't gotten to it. So if you are somebody who has sent me something, please be patient. I will try and get around to it as soon as I can, but I kind of have the opposite problems of most reviewers, where most reviewers are trying to get juice to talk about, and I have more juice than I can talk about, you know? So it's just the time thing. But I always love hearing your thoughts. Always respond to every single comment. That's my pledge. I want to respond to every single comment, even if it's just saying thanks for watching. But I read every single comment you guys leave. We're still small enough that we can do that. There will be some more 9,000 subscriber celebration videos. Still okay. 9,000 subscriber celebration videos, which we're now already at 9,100, but I'm going to do another version of the reference video. That was a very popular video, and there's more fragrances I want to discuss too. So there'll be some more lists and stuff like that, but more of these little late night insight videos to come, because I have more samples than I know what to do with. I'm trying to kind of do the reviews and get them in a spot that's away from the next sample line I want to discuss. But if you have any experience with Orto Parisi, do let me know. As always, it's an honor and a pleasure. Thanks for watching. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.